So what's the secret to running a successful barbershop? In my opinion, it's client retention. And client retention is one of the most critical metrics in your barbershop. And if you're anything like me, in the past, I wasn't even aware of this. In this video, I'm going to talk about how important client retention is, the things that we've done to increase client retention, and how it affects how much money you make as a barbershop owner. So if you're curious on how you can make more money off less clients, not have to be so dependent on marketing, then this video is for you. I'm going to cover everything we did to increase our client retention. I'm going to share what are the good retention numbers to shoot for. Higher the better, honestly, but I'm going to share what I think should be the minimum standard. And I'm also going to share what it looks like in the numbers if you actually increase your retention as a barbershop. So let's get into that. So we're going to pull up our agenda for this video. Boom, I got my hook done, right? All right, so let's talk about client retention. Let's define it first. So why is it important? So client retention measures how many clients keep coming back after their first visit. Also, if it's repeat clients, how many clients that are already coming to you, how many are coming back? It's definitely a major indicator of how satisfied your clients are and how sustainable your business is. Important. Let me repeat that. It's a major indicator. Client retention. Client retention is a major indicator of how satisfied your clients are and how sustainable your business is. So a lot of barbers think that they're hot shit because they can do great fades and do sharp lines. But the only question I care about is, did the client come back or not? It doesn't matter how good you are at cutting hair. If the clients don't come back, then you're going to have to keep looking for new clients. Plain and simple. It doesn't matter what type of barbershop you're in, how long you've been a barber. Did the clients come back or not? Now, obviously, like I mentioned in other videos, this is kind of a situational thing. I used to think that client retention was the end-all be-all for all barbershops, and I still think that that's the case for 99% of barbershops out there. But there is exceptions to everything that I talk about. And one of the exceptions in this case would be maybe you're in an area where is a very tourist heavy area, a very transient area, a very walk-in heavy area. So an example, if you have a barbershop in Disney World or something, or in a hotel, in a mall where these people aren't necessarily going to come back, they might not even live there, then this may not be a number you want to optimize for. But I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that probably 99% of you watching this aren't in that scenario. You probably want your people to come back. So if that's the case, then this video is for you. You want to keep your clients coming back. I'm going to talk about how we did it and how it affects your business. The more loyal clients you have, the more consistent your income, the higher the lifetime value, which is how much a client spends with you over time. So, for example, an indicator of client value, client lifetime value. So an easy way to think about this is, let's say you charge $50 for a haircut, right? And somebody comes to you on average about 3 times before they stop coming to you. So the client's lifetime value would be $150, 50 times 3. If you could figure out how to get that client to come back 6 times, that's $300, right? If you can get them to come back even more, then that's even more money that you make off them. So this is how powerful retention is, because if you can get somebody to come back even a few more months, you make way more money off the same clients. And then the business grows faster, right? You also have a way more consistent business if you have high retention, because you don't have these huge fluctuations, right? It's just the same regulars coming back over and over and over again. And that's what you want most barbershops out there, most barbers, me included, I think, want to just see the same clients over and over again. New clients are great every now and then. We always need new clients to grow our business. But the way you stay in business, the way you stay busy, the way you know that your clients are actually happy is if they actually come back, right? Client retention is actually a very, very humbling number, because like I said, it doesn't matter how good you think you are as a barber. If your retention is low, the clients don't come back. That means they aren't coming back. And it doesn't matter how good you think you are. If the clients don't come back, then you must not be that good, right? There might be another factor too. There's always more than one reason why somebody doesn't come back. Typically, there's a lot of things, a lot of variables that could determine whether a client decides to come back or not. Some of them might not even have to do with you. Like I mentioned, maybe they don't even live there. But a lot of it is under your control as a barber. So that's why I think retention is a very humbling number, because maybe you're not as good as you think you are, and that's okay, because once you start tracking retention, you can start figuring out things that you can do to improve it. And that's the biggest advantage of tracking retention, because once you start to get a baseline of this is where we are now, how can we improve it? And you can test this. So you make a change in the business, and then you monitor retention, and did it go up? Then that was a good change. Did it go down? That was a bad change. You want to reverse that, right? But the idea is you want to try to keep retention going up, or at least stable, right? And we're going to talk about, I think, what good retention numbers to shoot for are. And I'm not sure if I'm going to cover it later in the video, but let me just cover it now so I don't forget. But the big thing that I learned when it came to retention is you have to define what your retention window is. So what I mean by that is, let's say you want to figure out what your January retention was, and then you want to give a retention window of 90 days. So that means you're not going to learn what your January retention was until March or April, right? Because you have to wait that month plus a whole 90 days to pass before that month becomes accurate. So keep that in mind when you start tracking retention. I think 90 days is the shortest window that I found that is accurate. You can go longer than that if you want, but I wouldn't go shorter, because the number gets really depressing, to be honest, right? So you want to wait that month plus 90 days. So then you figure out, so in March or April, you will learn what January, there's a huge delay. And that's why this is called a lagging indicator. Retention is a lagging indicator, because if you wait 90 days after the month passed, you're not going to know what the retention was for that month till 4 months later. Right? So that's why I started tracking a lot of the changes that I make in the business, because I might not even remember a change that I made 4 months ago. So I write down a lot of the major changes I make in the business, because I want to be able to look back and see, oh, I saw retention increased in January. What did I do in January that could have affected that? And then you go back and look at your change log, basically. And you're like, oh, that's when we started offering memberships. That makes sense. So it's something that's been super helpful for me, but just keep in mind that you can look at your retention for this month right now. Just know it's going to be really low, because there hasn't been enough time for those clients to come back. That's what I mean by the retention window. It's that month plus another 90 days. If the client comes back within the 90 days, then that would be considered a retained client. And retention actually tends to go up over time, even after that 90 days. It just doesn't go up by that much, I found in my case. But the reason why it can go up even more after 90 days is because some guys don't get their haircut every week, every month. Some guys get their haircut twice a year, once a year. So retention can actually go up over time, because you're not accounting for, because you're assuming that most of your clients are coming back within that 90 days, which I think is a safe assumption for a barbershop. So you can just play with that retention window. You can make it whatever you want. Ours is 90 days. So that means we have to wait 4 months to learn what our retention is. So if you start tracking retention, just keep in mind what you're seeing this month right now is not accurate. You're gonna have to look like 4 months ago if it's a 90-day window. And then, so let's move on. So retention benchmarks. So I think that most barbershops should aim for 50 to 60%. Oh, that seems kind of low, right? I would say 70% is what you should shoot for. That's what we're at right now as far as total client retention. 50 to 60%. Think about it. 50%, you're losing half your clients every month, right? Which is terrible. So I would shoot for a minimum. I'm going to change this. I've learned some things since I first made this, right? But I think you should shoot for a minimum of 70% total client retention, which means it's kind of a blended average of new versus repeat clients. New client retention is typically going to be lower than your repeat client retention. Unless you just switch to a new software, then everybody's going to be a new client, right? But new clients are harder to retain because either they don't live there, they were just stopping in because they were in the area, or they just wanted to take advantage of that deal you were advertising, right? It just takes a lot more to convince new clients to come back than to somebody who's already been coming to you, which is we would consider a repeat client, right? So keeping repeat clients coming back is the game, right? We want new clients to come back too, because new clients turn into repeat clients. But once they become a repeat client, we want to just keep them coming back. And we're going to talk about some of the retention strategies that we did that helped with that. For new clients, way more difficult to get them to come back. What you could consider doing something like offering them an incentive on their second or third visit. I've heard multiple times now from different people that the third visit is key. If you can get somebody to come back 3 times, then you got them, right? At least the likelihood that you retain them long term is way higher if you can get somebody to come back 3 times. So one way that we've tested doing this is to sell a package of 3 services, right? And you can do a heavy discount on this, but you could say, get 3 haircuts for the price of 2, right? So now you got them for 3 visits guaranteed. And the cool thing about doing that is you get the cash up front. So you get 2 haircuts worth of cash, right? So if you're running paid ads, this is a great way to recoup your cost for the cost of acquisition. But you can get your new clients, you could sell them a package of 3 haircuts. And on that third visit, hopefully they decide to come back for a 4th and for many years to come, right? For repeat clients, you just got to keep them coming back, right? And that's just having a consistent experience. And we'll talk about the other things that we did to do that. So now I want to share with you my numbers and just to show you how we kind of stack up with this, right? So like I mentioned, new clients are harder. So I have 2 barbershops, and our Riverside location is the newer one, and our Southside location is the older one, the original, right? So at our new location, we're retaining about 36% of our new clients, which is, it's okay, right? It's not bad, right? What I'm really proud of is this number right here was our repeat client retention. So 81%, 81.5% of our repeat clients are coming back. That's great. I'm really happy with that. The only thing that I just want to boost this number right here. So that's, we're maybe testing some strategies, like I mentioned, doing some packages, doing something to get them, to incentivize them essentially to come back, to get those new clients coming back, because new clients, again, turn into repeat clients. But total, that ends up being like around 73%. So not too bad, could be better, right? But definitely like we're headed in the right direction, because before, I don't think I have it on here, this number was a lot lower. We were 20% for clients, and then before with our repeat clients, it was like 70 or something like that. It was really low. So we were probably closer to like 50 for total client retention at Riverside. And this number, I forget what month I pulled this from. I want to say this was like September. No, I just pulled that one. I want to say it was like October or either July or August, right? Because again, there's like a delay. I'm in January recording this right now. So we just learned what our September retention was. So when I made this outline originally, it was last month. So these numbers are probably from like August. In our Southside location, a little bit lower as far as new client retention goes, and as far as repeat client retention goes as well, a little bit lower, but still pretty decent numbers, right? 71% total client retention. And actually our client retention has actually gone up a little bit since I made this. So it's actually getting a little bit better. So right now both shops are kind of outperforming average. And I'm really proud of our like repeat client. And the to shoot for is 100%, right? So it's not realistic, right? You're not going to retain 100% of your clients because, like I mentioned, things are outside of your control. Like people move away, people were just in town for the weekend. I've had clients die, right? So they're not going to come back. So for whatever reason, your retention is never going to be 100%, but it should be the thing that you shoot for, because the more clients you have coming back, the less new clients you need to take their spot. Because there's another side of the retention equation. Like my barbers, me and a lot of barbers like to focus on the retention number, like how many you're retaining. But there's another side of that equation, which is called churn, or how many clients you lost. So if your is 80%, it also means you lost 20% of your clients, and you're losing 20% of your clients every single month. So if you keep that trend every 5 months, you're going to be losing 100% of your clients, right? That's not really the case, right? Because some people come back for years, but that's what that could mean, right? So that's why retention is so important, because you don't need as many new clients if you just keep the same people coming back. There's a quote, I don't think it's on here. I heard somebody in our industry say one time, or maybe it was outside of our industry, but he's like, how many clients would you have if every single person that you cut came back? How busy would you be? Probably be very busy. So that's why retention is so important, because if you could just keep as many people coming back as possible for as long as possible, you will be busy and you will have more clients than you can handle. So that's why this is the most important number to optimize for. And again, if you don't track retention right now, just know that I was in that boat too. Just a few years ago, like our system didn't even track retention. I had no idea what our retention was. All I saw was like, we have on the books today, right? If you know what your retention is, it's going to be hard to try to improve it. Does that make sense? Like it's like to lose weight. You don't own a scale. Like maybe you're weight, but how do you know? So if you're not tracking your client retention, then I don't know how you're going to actively work on improving it. So it's really important first to start tracking it. And that involves using the right software. Like I use Zenoti, Zenoti, right? And I'm not paid by them. That's what I use. And it tracks this stuff. This is one of the main reasons why I switched to that software, because I was using Square, and Square is great as far as simplicity and just ease of use. But there's a trade-off to that simplicity, and that's that you sacrifice some of the accuracy in the numbers. So if you sometimes to go with more complicated software, if you want to start to get an idea of what these numbers are, because you have to be able to make good decisions in your business with accurate numbers. And sometimes that involves like going to complicated softwares, right? So Zenoti is a very complicated software. It takes a long time to learn how to use, but the good side of that is that you know everything there is to know about how to run your business when you use softwares that are built for our industry. So that's where we're at retention wise. And I think that as long as you're at total client of 70% or higher, then you're doing great. And these are kind of the benchmarks if you want to split it up by new and repeat clients. But honestly, like 100% is the number you should shoot for. And I would stop until we get to like as high as possible, really. 100% is not realistic though, again, but you can get into the 80s, 90. I have some 90% total client retention. So between new and repeat, they're retaining 90% of everybody, right? And it should be no surprise that barber has 90% total client retention, basically never has a slow day. So if you never want to have a slow day in your barbershop, focus on retention, getting people to come back. And I just thought about this but it's really important. One of my coaches in the past told me, not tracking retention. If you don't know what the number is, then it's probably lower than what you think it is. I thought that was great advice, and it's been consistently true every time I've put that to the test. Any time that I started looking at a number that I wasn't tracking before, it was always lower than what I thought. And that's why I think what I said in the beginning, retention is a really humbling number, because you can think you're a great barber until you see your retention and how many people didn't come back, and you're like, whoa, I got some work to do, right? So let's move on to how retention actually boosts lifetime value. We're going to do some math here, but don't worry, it's going to be really simple. But lifetime value is the total revenue a client generates when they stick with you. And this also doesn't count, like the example I gave earlier with client lifetime value does not include like product sales and other things, right? It doesn't include tips, right? Barber, we're watching this. It's probably higher that we're just going off services for right now, but you can go off your average ticket. But let's use this example. So for instance, if a client spends $50 per visit and comes in every 4 weeks, their annual value is $650. If they stay loyal for 5 years, that's $3,250. But if they leave after 6 months, that's only $300, right? And this is how the difference that retention makes in your business. It literally comes down to this. somebody that stays for 5 years spends 10 times more than somebody that leaves after 6 months. So then the question that you have to answer as a barbershop owner is, how do I get somebody to come back for 5 years, right? Because if everybody's leaving in 6 months, you only made $300 off that person. And if you're not very good at advertising, paid advertising, it's going to be tough to make your money back because there's a cost of acquisition if you're only getting clients spending $300 with you before they stop coming. So if you can get clients coming back longer, that's how you can recoup that cost to get them in the door with the paid ads that you might have been running. So let's talk about some of the factors that affect client retention, because you guys are probably wondering, okay, I get what retention is, how important it is. I get all, like, how do I actually improve retention? Well, here's how we did it, right? So first thing, like I mentioned, it's like one thing. I wish I could just say, just do this one thing and that's going to affect retention. I mean, it's retention just doing one thing. But it's really a combination of things that makes somebody decide whether they want to come back or not. So these are kind of them. There's a lot more to it than this, but let's just get into this part right here. So consultations, probably the most overlooked skill of being a barber or a hairstylist. I've seen so many talented barbers mess up haircuts. I've messed up haircuts simply by just not putting enough effort into the consultation. And the way I think about it is, if it doesn't matter how skilled you are as a barber, if what you give the client, if the haircut you give them doesn't match what they wanted, it doesn't matter how good the haircut was. They're not going to come back, right? Because they got something they didn't want, right? They ordered this. It's like they go to a restaurant and you order a meal. Like, they ordered thing and you gave them something else completely different. The food might have been great in your opinion, right? And that's it is the haircut might have been great, but that's not what they ordered. That's not what they wanted, right? So consultations, really, really important. I have a whole 40-minute consultation video on my YouTube channel if you want to check that out. Everything I know about consultations is in that video, but really, really important. The next thing is consistent service quality. So the way you can do that is taking notes on clients, even taking pictures or video notes. Writing down how they got their haircut so that you don't have to do some huge depth consultation every time. You can just be like, let me check your notes real quick. So I can tell you that all of the barbers in my shop that have the highest retention all take really, really detailed about how they did the haircut, how the products that the client uses, how often they rebook for, even personal notes like their kids' names, what they do for work, any upcoming trips that they have, things so they can pick up the conversation next time they come in. So that all leads to a more consistent, more personalized, and more special, ultimately, experience when they come to the barbershop, if you can be just focused on consistency. So I think the reason why franchises are winning in our industry is because even though the haircuts that you get at not so great clips are not that great, it's consistent. They know that they're going to be taken back within a certain time. They know the place is the same every time. It's clean every time. The customer service is great, right? So again, it doesn't matter how good you think you are cutting hair. There's so many other factors that determine whether somebody decides to come back or not. And clean professional environments, like I just talked about, right? You'd be surprised. I think that we get compliments all the time on how clean our shop is. And of course, I love to hear it, right? But I also think, well, that's how it should be. I mean, that's how it is. That's what our state cares about, is, are you keeping your stuff clean? They're not coming in checking our haircuts and how blurry our fades are. When a state inspector comes in, they're seeing, do you have a license? And are you keeping your stuff clean? Because that's all the state cares about. So, what do you think clients are doing when they're sitting down for half an hour on their haircut? They're looking around. They're seeing all the hair on the floor. They're seeing that you haven't cleaned your mirror in 6 months. They're seeing that there's hair all over your station. They see this stuff, right? And they may not consciously notice it or say anything, but unconsciously they might start to think, well, is he cleaning his tools, or is she cleaning her tools before she cuts my hair? Because I don't want to get an infection, right? And that starts to wear on people over time. And I can tell you that from my experience, it's usually not just like one thing gets people to not come back to your barbershop anymore. It's usually a combination of things. So maybe you took them back late, way past their appointment time. Fine, maybe they can deal with that. But then you also took them back late and your clippers were dirty. And then you also took them back late, your clippers were dirty and you don't remember their haircut. So like these things add up, and over time, like people might think like, I think I'm ready to try a new barber, you know? I don't even maybe know why, but they just start to get this feeling like maybe I should check out my options, you know? So more than one thing that gets people to stay, it's also more than one thing that makes people leave. So fixing retention is not going to be just a one-hit wonder, but you start to focus on one of these things at a time. You try not to do everything, just focus on one thing at a time, and eventually when you get them all down, you're going to probably start to notice your retention increasing. Focusing on new clients, I think, especially for a new shop, or especially if you're doing a lot of marketing, it's really important that you get your new client retention as high as possible. Like ours is kind of low. It's better than what it was, but it could be a lot better. I've seen barbers at our shop get to 50, 60% or higher new client retention. So I know that it's possible. On the location level though, that's where we're at. So we need to, the question we need to answer as a barbershop owner is, how do we get everybody to be like that person and retaining the clients to that level, right? Because if you're spending money on ads, new client retention should be a major focus, because again, there's a cost to get these people in the door. And if they don't come back, then you're just blowing money on ads, you know? It's basically brand awareness, but everybody's just becoming aware that you're not that good. If you're getting new clients to come in and they don't come back, there's there, right? And you just need to fix that problem. So there's first impressions matter for sure. And really, I think consistent impressions matter too, you know? So about first impressions all the time in our culture, right? But I think consistent impressions are just as important, if not more important, than first impressions, right? If you're the same every time as a barber, if you give the same great haircut every time, the same great experience every time, you have a huge advantage as a barber, because that's really rare to find. Anybody can give a good haircut once, but can you give that same great every single time? That's the challenge. That's the thing that you need to solve for. And then build relationships. I touched on this earlier, but remembering people's names, preferences, engage in conversations. Not everybody likes to talk. I get it. I'm a barber. I know. But for the people that do, make the conversation about them. There's a great book, I talk about it all the time, called How to Win Friends and Influence People. Basically, how to clients, how to talk to people in general. But you can use the notes, if your system lets you save notes, to save personal things about them. Not too personal, but just things, just remember their name. You know, even little things like when you check them in or when you take them back for their appointment, like, hey, John, how's it going? Nice to see you again, you know? Little that, like people like their name. Like instead of, you ready? You know, like, no, I'm for you. You know, would you drink? You know, things like, how like their haircut. Obviously, you want to have that written down. But like little preferences, they don't the razor or whatever, you know, like they're allergies. Like there's up a whole video on like how to notes, but you want your notes to be as detailed as possible. And there's a time cost associated with this, but it's more than worth it. If you can just, sometimes you only have to do the notes once too, because a lot of guys get the same haircut for years. Some people switch it up, but in general, once you have the notes started, worst case scenario, they change their haircut, you just update it, right? Because not a lot of other things in their life maybe are going to change. So maybe you just did a 1 this time instead of a 2. Okay, you update notes, everything else stays the same, but create the notes first, and then you just update them over time if things change. But here's probably the biggest thing, right? So that as far as the things that moved the needle the most last year for us when it comes to client retention, it ultimately comes down, I think, to employee retention. Because happy barbers lead to happy clients. If your team is stable, motivated, clients get consistent service and build trust with the same barber. Now, this is where you may find like a little bit of a conflict of interest when it comes to some barbershop owners. And I don't know that I'm always going to feel this way, but as of right now, when I'm making this video, I want my barbers to get booked. I want them to have regulars, right? And the reason why is because I want the shop to have regulars. So I want the same barbers for as long as I can, right? And I know, because I know that the longer I keep the barbers, the longer I will keep the clients. And some barbershop owners are against this, and that's fine. Run your business however you want. Some, they don't want the clients to build a relationship with that barber, and I get it because, me too, where barbers come in, they build up a book of business, and then they leave and they try to take people with them, right? But there's things you can do to prevent that, which we'll talk about in a second. But the idea is like the less you have as a barbershop, the less turnover you're going to have with your clients, right? Clients want to see the same people over and over again. That's the way our business is. I don't know why, but that's the way it is. So the ways you can boost our employee retention, obviously competitive pay, big part of it. But honestly, it's not necessarily always the pay, surprisingly, that I found that keeps people loyal to you. A lot of it is the benefits too, because maybe they could get higher pay somewhere else, but they're not going to get the benefits. So I think that you should, if you can afford it, strongly consider offering some sort of benefits in your barbershop, because it may be the thing that keeps people, even if they're have an opportunity to get a job with a higher pay, but that higher pay is going to mean that they lose those benefits, right? So I think that there is a relationship between how many benefits a barber participates in and their willingness to stay, right? Because they might be able to leave and get a higher paying job, but then they lose their medical insurance or their dental, right? And now they got to pay for that themselves out of pocket. And then now the raise that they got doesn't even make sense anymore, right? So it's like, why leave? So we offer as many benefits as I can afford. But I will just say, I will caution you, and this is a strong caution, that benefits are expensive. Do the math to make sure before you offer benefits to your barbers that you can afford it. And I can tell you right now, the most expensive benefits that we offer at the moment are medical insurance and a 401k with a company match. So the company match specifically is the expensive part, right? Because we do a 4% match. We match 100% of their contributions up to 4% of their pay. So basically overnight, right, we increased our payroll by 4% when we started offering that 401k. And 4% might not sound like a lot, but if, 40% revenue is going to payroll, now it's 44. That's a huge hit. That might be the difference between making money and losing money, 4% in our business, right? So really take the time to consider whether you can afford the benefits before you offer them, because it's one of those things that it's really, really hard to take back, right? And sometimes balance, if I give your people more, it's not always money that they need, right? Or sometimes it's more money. Everybody likes more money, but sometimes people need other things too. They need healthcare, they need dental, they need vision. We also offer paid time off. We have the 401k with a company match, right? So think about these things, but I think you should offer them if you can afford it. But the key is make sure you can afford it before you offer it, because it's going to be one of those things really, really hard to take back, right? A positive culture, ultimately, I think maybe even more important than pay, to be honest, because if people love coming to work and they love working with their team, you're going to be way more likely to keep them. And also the clients, I think, pick up on that, because the clients can tell if you're kind of in an atmosphere, or not really getting along and fighting with each other. Whereas if clients are coming in and everybody's helping each other out and laughing and having fun, clients pick up on that too, right? And that's what we want them to pick up on. So a culture, I think, is probably the strongest indicator in my experience so far of what's going to keep somebody long term. Some people aren't going to like the way you run your shop, and that's fine. They're not going to work out anyway, so they can go. But the people that like working as part of a team, if that's the way you like to run it, you want to kind of encourage them. You want to maybe get them to do things outside of work so they can build even stronger bonds. Because that's another thing that's going to lead to employee retention, is if they have like friends. Very, very good and things can happen when the team is just working really well together, right? And also, the longer the team works together, the better they work, right? Because once you start to like learn how other people work, you can just kind of like, the other person's gonna do, like, that person's finishing up now, let me go ahead and sweep her hair for her. So many benefits to just keeping the same barbers coming back. over and over again. So one of the things that can help as far as retention goes, client retention, is membership programs and loyalty programs. So we started off by offering a loyalty program, but we actually transitioned to a membership-based program for a couple reasons. The main thing was loyalty programs don't necessarily guarantee that the clients are going to come back. They appreciate them, but memberships are pretty much guaranteeing that they're going to come back, because the main difference is loyalty programs, in our case, like it was, they got points for every dollar they spent, and after so many points that they earned, I think it was 150 points, they get like $5 off. Whereas a membership, they get $10 off, but they have to prepay. And if they prepay, they're going to come in, right? Memberships, any kind of recurring revenue model too, makes also the business more stable and more valuable, whereas a loyalty program doesn't necessarily have the same effect as far as the business's valuation goes. So, and memberships have a great advantages. There are some downsides to offering memberships, but one of the other advantages is that, like I talked about with this one, if you have a client on a membership program, a subscription with your barbershop, and a barber leaves, the client is at least a lot more likely to keep their membership, because they'll just maybe try somebody else out. Not always, right? But it just makes people a little bit more loyal to the barbershop as opposed to that individual barber. When you have a membership program, and where a loyalty program doesn't necessarily accomplish the same thing, right? And then the second thing is follow-up and feedback. So sending appointment reminders, I mean, I have that contributes to client retention, I guess, so they don't forget about it, right? But thank you texts, thank you phone calls, huge, huge. People appreciate. We've even done like handwritten cards. May bring that back in the future. We tested it for a while. It didn't have a huge effect, but hey, if you got time, why not, right? Handwritten cards, saying thank you, a thank you text, a thank you phone call, a thank you voicemail, video, whatever. Just that, and it not automated, right? Just like, if you can, try to like manually do it, because people can tell that it's automated. They're not dumb, right? But this is something that clients, when they really appreciate these little things, and anything you can do to get people to come back is usually worth the investment, I've found. So let's just recap now. Good retention rates for barbershops. 70% I think should be the minimum you shoot for. Focus on increasing new client retention, repeat client loyalty, barber satisfaction. Really, barber satisfaction and retention can help with you exceeding those benchmarks. It's not just about keeping clients, but keeping them coming back and creating long-term value, right? Because like we talked about earlier, you can get 10 times the amount of revenue from one person if you can get them to come back longer. That's the effect that retention has. And then if you know what your shop's retention is, I'm curious, share it in the comments. I don't know if that's going to motivate you, but if you want to make more money with less clients as a barbershop owner, focus on retention. Get the people to come back. You already did the hard part, getting them to come in and give you a try. Now it's just, let's get them to come back. And if they don't want to come back, you can use that feedback, why, to figure out how to make your business better, right? And if you get them to come back, then you make more money, everybody's happy, right? So in short, you can use this formula in here if you want, but just know that every percentage increase that you increase retention is going to make you more money. I don't think there's anything else besides profitability that you should focus on as a barbershop owner. The only thing that matters, in my opinion, as long as you're in, not like a super transient situation, focus on people to come back, because that will ultimately make you more money so that you don't have to spend a ton of time and effort marketing. Just keep clients coming back and you will make more money. Hopefully you guys found that helpful. See you in the next one.